Hello and welcome to another video in the How Do I Do Something in CloudBolt video series. My name is Mike Bombard and I'm a principal cloud architect here at CloudBolt. And in today's video, we're going to be covering how do I use shared modules in CloudBolt. So shared modules are a newer feature in the system. They were introduced in 2023.5, so the December release of 2023 for CloudBolt. And this is really, I think, one of the bigger value propositions here is the ability to minimize the amount of repeated code needed across different CloudBolt plugins. So the business value, the challenge, really, these shared modules, they were created to help our customers more readily share common pieces of code between CloudBolt plugins. So in the past, what myself and our customers may have done for common pieces of code that needed to be reusable, what they would have done is either include them in all pieces of code or had some other types of workarounds that were in the system. We're going to cover that a little bit further in our introduction here. But really, the introduction of CloudBolt shared modules, they now allow you to write code once and share it with any of your CloudBolt plugins inside of the system. This enables you to minimize the amount of repeated code potentially inside of the system, as well as packages those shared modules with any export of content from the CloudBolt system. So this is what we're going to be covering in this video, our shared modules agenda. We're going to start by covering an introduction and talk about why shared modules. And then we're going to cover off a basic example leveraging a generated options plugin, just as one use case that I'm going to be using this for moving forward. We're going to create that shared module. We're going to show you how to connect this to your IDE if you're leveraging an IDE. It's a little bit different than what we've done with past CloudBolt plugins. And then we're going to work through the process to get this be called from a build plugin. So taking that generated options plugin and using it to generate options for a CloudBolt blueprint. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into CloudBolt shared modules. We're going to start with the introduction, just kind of talk through some of the background here and just show what problems this helps to resolve. And I'm going to start with this Ansible automation blueprint. This is something I put together for a previous How Do I video, where we went through just basically running an ad hoc job template in Ansible automation. So if we look at the code that's available here and we scroll down, there's a couple of things that are common to CloudBolt plugins. Number one is the run method, which is standard. Anytime we do a build action or teardown action, or probably 95% of the automation that we do in CloudBolt starts with this run method as the insertion point. However, if we scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that there's a couple of generated options plugins here, and then we'll get down to this class. So this is a class that is, I'm actually going to open this so we can see the line count here. But this is a class for Ansible automation. This handles all of the API connectivity as well as the REST API calls that we're making to Ansible. And what you'll notice is there's a whole bunch of logic that's going on here. There's probably maybe 300 lines worth of code in this class itself. And right now it's really basic. It will go out and execute a job template is all the class is doing today. What shared modules allows us to do at CloudBolt is to take this class out of this plugin. The plugin itself, the plugin is called Ansible Automation Run Job Template. We should be using that run method to invoke some kind of call against an external system. However, when you look at a blueprint, and this wasn't the use case for this, so we just kind of went with the one-off use case, but anytime I want to talk to Ansible, I'm going to have to recall that class again. So before shared modules, what we would used to have to do is maybe in our teardown, we create a teardown method. We're going to have to include that same class inside of the teardown method, and then maybe a discovery method that then goes out and talks to Ansible. Maybe day two actions that are run against Ansible automation. All of those different mechanisms are still going to have to make API calls to Ansible. And there just wasn't a good way to do that across these plugins. There were some ways to do it. It just wasn't easy to do and it wasn't easy to manage. But there were a couple of challenges that came along with that. First of all, you're duplicating a whole ton of code. So if there's a bug in one of these and I fix it on one of the tabs and don't fix it on the others, now those other three tabs now have the same bug that the initial tab had. If I'm adding capability for one of these tabs, it doesn't populate over to the other tabs. I'd have to go back in and manually copy the Ansible automation class, paste it into those other plugins. It's just a really challenging thing to do. So Where shared modules come in is now when we go to our admin page, we can take a look at the shared modules that exist inside of the system. I'm going to start with maybe this ARIA connection one. Basically, what we're able to do now is create one shared module. So I see for a couple of really good use cases here. I'm sure there's a lot more than what I'm already thinking about. But the two that come to mind that we'll be covering here are going to be generated options, as well as API connectivity. So anytime I do API connectivity moving forward, I'm going to create a class that will be a shared module that allows me to call that really from another blueprint, or allows me to call it from another plugin in the same blueprint. And as I build this shared module, I can grow and mature the API capabilities for a particular system. This just shows you here really quickly, when I'm building, so in my other plugins, the way that I would call this is by using this import statement here, and we'll look at some of the other capabilities that we've showed you here. Shared modules can also import other shared modules. So maybe I wanted to import another shared module in here. If I were to do this, it would add an import statement to my file here and increase. I don't want to do that for this particular example, but that allows us, in using the editor in CloudBolt, to import the shared modules. So we'll get a lot deeper than that as we go through this, but that's basically the problems that we're looking to solve. This is also very helpful because we also have a listing of where the shared module is being used inside of the system as well. So when we start to talk about how do we test this or make sure that shared module changes didn't impact any of the other plugins, we can see all of those directly from the shared module itself. So again, just a brief introduction, but let's go ahead and take a look at some of the examples. All right, so the first example that we're going to start with is going to be generated options. And this should be a fairly quick one to show. I'm going to, first of all, go back to, I guess I could have used shared modules to get back there, but from all admin, we can get to shared modules under the orchestration menu. Then we can add a shared module. We can either create a new or upload. I don't have this yet, so we're just going to create this. And label, I'm going to call this, let's call this generated options. Okay, so the reason that I'm doing a single module for generated options is because I want to basically centralize my generated options. I do a lot of generated options plugins, and there's a lot of them that I reuse a ton. The one that we're going to be tackling here is generate options for environment or environment ID, one of the two. This allows me to centralize my generated options plugins and stop writing that same logic in every single one of my plugins. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna create a module called generated options, and I can put any of my generated options plugins in here and then share them across my hundreds of CloudBolt blueprints. One of the things I will point out here that I've run into with shared modules so far, the fetch from URL option. This will allow you to store your shared modules in a Git repository. This does not currently support the ability to load from a file with CloudBolt, which is something that I do for a lot of my development. I will show you when we get into the Ansible example how to still edit on the file system from an IDE. So we'll get there. So I'm going to select enter code later now. I'm going to go ahead and submit. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to pop over to my PyCharm editor. We're going to leave that alone for now. I have probably hundreds of options. I'm just going to, just out of curiosity, I'm going to search this whole directory. Let's do find in files, and I'm going to do, if it'll let me pull this over to the screen, we're going to do generate options for environment. Okay, so this allows me to standardize things. It gives me a lot of control over this. Now, there's a couple of different use cases here, and I'm trying to think through this. I might create one master generated options plugin for environment, but I think, so we're only showing 4 here, which I find interesting. What if I call this env ID? So there's quite a bit more. I do this a lot. I mean, anytime we're we are leveraging environments. So maybe for an AWS or Azure build plugin where we're building something for those types of endpoints, we would use this. But I think I'm going to stick with environment. I'm going to make this a little more generic in nature. Let's just see. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I want the actual. Now, I could return all environments. I don't think that's a good practice, just because then I could be seeing environments for things that don't belong to me. Here we go. So this is what I'm looking for, is this one where I'm looking at both a resource handler as well as a group. So we want to make sure that, let's go ahead and do this. Generate options for environments. I want environments plural. So I'm going to go back to envid. I already have examples for this, and that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to pause this while I'm finding this. All right, so we're going to use this example. It's not quite what I want it to do, but we'll go ahead and fix that as we get into this. So let's go over, we have our shared module here. From the shared module, this is very, very simple out of the gate. We're going to, I think I just copied that too. Yeah, let's delete that, go back over, copy, and then back to, there we go. There's our generated options. The only other thing I'm going to need here, let's see, am I doing any logging? Don't have any logging. I do have an environment import that I'm going to need. So I'm just going to capture that real quick. Not, it will not like this. So there we go. We have our imports. We have our first method. Generate options for envid. I'm actually going to change this. I think I want to stick with environment. I know that this is going to return a list of environment IDs with a name as the label. But since I'm starting to standardize this, I want to make this a little more common across my instances. I'm also going to, let's do returns list of. This is going to be ugly. I don't typically, I'll edit my IDE for the second example, but this is going to be quick. So of ID name pairs. Actually, they're technically tuples. So we're going to have our ID and our name is going to be returned. So let's just make sure this is right. So I do want to make sure that we're always only returning a list of environments for the group that we're deploying for. So we're going to have to pass the quarks into this from a plugin that we're using. Field, I'm going to also, this we can do this a couple of different ways. I think I'm going to include it with quargs. Let's do, I might need to test this real quick, but I'm going to do, I'm going to actually do RH technology type. Let's go out and do this real quick. I'm just going to connect to Shell Plus. Okay, now that I'm connected to Shell Plus, I'm going to go out and get a resource handler. I don't know which one this is. This is an AWS handler. That's perfectly fine. But I'm going to test resource technology dot name. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take in the resource technology name into my function. So let's just do, I'm going to call this name. And I'm going to say it is equal to none. That way, if I don't pass it in, doesn't matter. But if RT name is passed into this, what I want to do is I only want to filter for resource handlers that are matching that technology type. So I'm going to go in and find environments that match a resource handler that has the resource technology name equals to RT underscore name. That should do the trick. So let's do if RT underscore name, we're going to do this, else. This would allow me to say, if the resource technology isn't passed in, we're just going to return all the environments that they need, which I don't think there's a lot of use cases where that would be applicable, but just in case, we're going to address that. So just return all technologies for the group. So let's go ahead and save this now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this import. Let's see if this is working in Shell Plus. I haven't done this in Shell Plus yet, so let's give it a shot. And then generated options. Generate options for environment. And then what I can do is I can pass in my quarks and all of those things. I do need to get a group first just to test this. So group equals, doesn't even matter, first group. So there's my group. But I can say, let's do, I'm going to do from shared modules.generated options, import generate options for environment. And then I can just go right to my method. And the first thing I need to pass in is going to be, sorry, doing this on two different screens is a little different than what I'm used to. So field and the resource technology name. So field really doesn't matter. We're not doing anything with field here. So I'm okay with that. So I'm just going to pass in none for field. And then for resource technology name, I'm not going to pass anything right now. And I am for quargs. I'm going to pass in group equals group. That should do the trick. Let's just see what we get back. Oh, that's why. Colon. There we go. So we didn't get any options back for my admins group. And let's just verify, maybe because I don't have anything available to my admins group. Unconstrained environments. There are some environments available. So let's kind of run through those one at a time then. Let's see. Group. So we have group. So let's just try this method, RT underscore name. I don't have RT name, so I'm just going to run this real quick just to make sure this works. So there are no environments being returned. Filter. Okay, so basically what I was running into just there, let's head back and just show the issue again. There are some environments available to my admins group, but they're all unconstrained environments. So what I'm not doing, what I wasn't doing, is I wasn't filtering to make sure that we were also finding environments that were not available to any groups. So I do want to filter on group equals none as well. So that would be an or clause, as well as these unassigned groups here. So you don't want unassigned to be available for people to deploy resources to. So I'm going to, let's do there's got to be a special. Interesting. Environment dot is unassigned. Okay, so we want to filter out for is unassigned as well. So let's just take our filter here. We're going to expand this a little bit. I'm just going to test it in here. We have our group, but we're going to do group in. We're also going to have to use a Django queue filter because we're going to introduce OR clauses. So the first thing I need to do here is, before I even start building this out, is to filter or import my queue. And then I'm going to build out my filter here. Okay, so we don't need the resource handler. We're not going to worry about that statement, but we do want group. We're going to do queue group in, and then for queue statements, you would do a pipe between for an OR statement, and then OR group equal none. So use that same terminology we're doing there. Now notice the unassigned is still there, so we're going to get rid of unassigned, and then is unassigned equal false. See if this works. It doesn't want to let me filter on that. Can't result in it is unassigned. Unassigned doesn't show either. May not be able to use that. I might have to just filter through this. We certainly don't want to return unassigned. So I think what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to leave this here, and then I'll loop through to return, to remove any is unassigned. So here's my basic query. So we're going to take this, head it back over into imports, and I'm going to test something here that I haven't had a chance to work with yet. But so we need that. We also need our queue import. Actually, I have it right here. So now we need to import queue as well. So we should be able to get a result now. So I'm going to save this. I suspect unauthorized. I'm going to copy this so that this doesn't. Delete it. Oh, I have been timed out apparently, even though I was actively working in the system. All right, so that's why I was unauthorized. Didn't save my changes. Let's go ahead and save now. There we go. It's been updated. So we now have that updated in here, and I'm just curious if we're still. Let's go back to our generate options for delete this. A little further back than I was expecting. There we go. So there we go. So still not seeing options for environment. So I'm going to do my import again. Still not returning options for the environment. I'm wondering. There we go. So it is showing. It's got my updates in there, but it's not returning what I'm expecting it to return yet. So interesting. Let's add some logging statements. Pause this real quick. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to edit this in my IDE. I can't stand using this editor. So the IDE gives me a couple of things. I can use GitHub Copilot for when I don't want to write documentation and things like that, but it also helps me kind of infer some of these additional things. I'm also able to pull my imports in a little easier. So for shared modules, like I'd mentioned earlier, you cannot call them directly on the file system. So there is a path on your CloudBolt server where there is a shared modules directory. And that path is going to be var www.html CloudBolt uploads, I believe. No, static, and then uploads, and then shared modules. So all of your shared modules, so first you have to create it in the CloudBolt database. Then you will see your shared modules here. So notice here's my generated options.py. Since I've already mapped to this directory, I have it available inside of my CloudBolt instance. I just need to sync my instance to pull from the CloudBolt server. If you're using SSH with, I'm just going to sync all of those. If you're using SSH with VS Code, this would show up automatically once you create that new plugin, and then you can start editing it on the file server once you're mapped into that folder. Okay, so generate options for environment ID. Okay, so this makes it a little easier for me to test. I'm going to close all of my additional things that we don't really need anymore. Let's open this plugin so we know exactly what we're working with. And okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of logging. Let's just make sure I prefer f-string, but I really don't care at this point. I just want to get this working. So we're going to import our set progress. So now we have set progress. It'll just give us some logging. I don't know. So this might be it. If not group, return none. I may also want to raise an error here, an exception, because we need to be getting a group. And if we're not, that's a problem. But anyway, let's go ahead and save. Let's save all. Now I do want to do, let's just load back to Shell Plus. Okay, Shell Plus is loaded. Let's go back to do our imports. Group is not defined. Group, we need to reset that. Okay, group is none. So that's the problem we're running into here. So let's just make sure. You know what I didn't do? I need to star this, I believe. Nope, doesn't like that. Let's just log quarks. Let's see what we're seeing there. I don't know. Here's one of the questions I have. I don't know if this dynamically updates code. It doesn't, so I assume I just need to re-import this to retest it. It doesn't seem to be working either. Let's see if our okay, so it has the logging statement there, so that's a start. Progress, common methods, group, none. Quarks. Why is it not logging quarks? I'm just going to restart to be sure. Okay, there we go. So we are getting our quarks passed in. They may not be in the right. Notice quarks is passing in. There's a quarks inside of the dictionary, which isn't what this should look like. How did I mess that up? Let's see. Actually, I think I just... I didn't like that. Allowed EMVs, where did that come from? I don't want... Oh, I don't care about those. So, made it further. We need to re-import. see what's loaded. It is not in there anymore. I think, shoot. Wait for it to load. So I do need to do my import again. I need to set my group. And then, hey, that's better. All right, so we're working now. Sorry, that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. I thought I had this already kind of laid out, but it's a good opportunity to get eyes on this. Now, the other thing I do want to try is I do want to see if we can get the first one where it filters by resource technology to work, and I need to loop through to ensure that there aren't any, let's do for if env dot is unassigned equals false. Pretty sure we can do that. Let's see if this works. Okay, I'm going to save my file. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to just see. Okay, looks like it's in there now. I don't think it's working. I think we have to reload shell plus if we're changing the shared module. So I'm still not 100%. I feel like I saw it work once, but it doesn't seem to be working now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Need to get our group. There we go. So now we filtered out unassigned. We're showing the correct environments and environment IDs for anything that's available to this group. The next thing that I want to do is let's set this to envs equals, and then I'm going to start with, these are all OpenStack environments and OCI. So I'm actually going to go out and get env equals envs. Get the last one. That's not what I want to do. Objects.get, and then I'm going to get it by ID. So now I have my environment, and I want to do resource handler dot resource technology dot name. I'm going to do RT name equals open stack. Go right back on in here, and I'm going to just call this RT underscore name. And this should filter it down to have less results than we had before. Let's do, what are my ENVs? None. So we got no ENVs. I did miss the added query. I think we can do this. I think we can. Actually, I think our queries, and I'm going to test this just because it's easier to test, but we need to include this inside of each queue statement. Could be wrong. Find out in a minute. So let's do, we want to make sure that that's the first queue statement. Actually, I don't like repeating myself. There's a better way to do this. So we can use an AND statement here. I think we can. think we can include these. So this is going to be an OR. We're going to make this the first statement. And we're going to do, So let's try this. Perfect, that should do the trick. We have our RT name. So that should be it. Notice we're not seeing OpenStack or anything like that. So this is the right statement we want for this here. Let's go and save it back. Actually, since I'm on the file system now, let's just make sure it's saved. Once it's saved, I'm going to reload shell plus. All right, shell plus is back up, so I'm going to go back through, do my imports. I'm going to do group equals, we also need RT underscore name equals. And then let's do EMBs equals EMBs. Perfect. So this OpenShift, even though it says OpenShift, is an OpenStack environment. It's just something I was messing with in my environment. So I know that these are all OpenStack resource handlers that I've passed in. I'm actually going to, let's just do one more thing. Let's do group equals, and I'm going to do get. I know my IT group has a lot more options here. Oh, name. Group. Now we have my IT group. So let's start here. We should see a lot more options for EMVs. Sorry, they're all OpenStack. So let's remove the RT name. I'm going to get rid of EMVs just so that way it prints. I need to store it. There we go. So we're seeing all of these different environments here now. Next thing I want to do, let's just see if we can filter for AWS. So instead of OpenStack, we'll do AWS. Let's get the, I don't remember, I think it's Amazon Web Services is the name. Let's try that. I'm pretty sure about that. There we go. So filtering by any AWS environment I have. So I'm fairly confident in this generated options plugin that we've just built now. So I'm going to save this one last time. All right, so we have our shared module ready to go. Now the kicker that the whole reason we did all of this is now I can reuse this generated options plugin in other CloudBolt plugins. So we have our, let's just refresh, make sure it's showing in the database. There we go. We have our updated queries in there. Here's my shared module. The only other thing, it should be fine. Okay, so we have our shared module here. Let's go over. I'm going to create a new blueprint and just show how to use this. Actually, before I go to that new blueprint, I'm going to copy that statement so that I can import this. Why is this logging me out so much? Call it shared modules test. Wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a duplicate. I'm not going to do, I don't need to create anything. I just want to show that this works in the drop downs. Groups, let's say anybody can deploy it. And then I'm going to go over to my build tab. I'm going to create a new CloudBolt plugin. Some generated options for environment. Just gonna keep that here. And then once this plugin gets created, I'm going to go ahead and go over. Notice it created the generic plugin. We don't need that. I'm going to use the constructs from it. So I'm just probably going to paste my import So the import that we just copied from the shared module, now we have the generated options, and they're actually, like I showed earlier, I'm going to do this. Because here's something interesting that I've had work with other plugins. We'll see if it works here. But I don't even want to write this function in here anywhere. I just want to have this work. So the way that CloudBolt works, and let's do env. We're going to call it envid, but we're going to set that to an input parameter called double curly bracket environment. This is going to create a new parameter. So here's my new parameter here. This is effectively going to go through, because I have a new input parameter called environment, this will parse the plugin to find, are there any generated options for plugins for this specific parameter name? So what should happen, assuming this is working correctly, I haven't tested this yet, but I shouldn't have to do anything else. All I have to do is declare the import for my generated options, and it should automatically, when I go to submit this blueprint, show me a drop down with my environment selections. Now, remember, there were two options with generate options for environment. One was field. So the way that I structured this may not work, but there were effectively two inputs. One is the field input, which we're going to pass field anyway. We already have field captured. The resource technology name is a positional parameter that's already set to a default of none. So if we're not getting that passed in, it's okay. It's going to give us a list of drop downs here that is not filtered by a resource technology. And then we'll take the next step and we'll set it to filter by resource technology. But let's do this. Okay, so this should be working. I just want to log this. And we're going to do VID. Okay, that should do the trick there. The rest of it, I really don't care about any of this. So just going to get rid of the rest of it. I don't even need to return a success. I'm just going to leave this very basic. Let's save the code and go back over to my blueprint, see if my dropdown's working. First, let's select our, oh, yeah, there you go. That's the environment. That's what we're looking for. So this is all of my environments. Everything but unassigned is showing up. So it's filtering based off of what's available to my IT group. Let's go to my admins group that we were working with earlier. There should be just the OpenStack environments. There you go. Notice this environment has now been constrained based off of the group selected. So I'm using that shared module plugin. I didn't have to do anything additional with it. Look at how much code was saved just by doing it this way. Versus having to do generated options. I have generated options plugins for an environment across probably 40 different blueprints in my instance. So by using this kind of a methodology, it's going to save me a lot of time and effort. Now, the other thing I just want to show real quick, and then we'll probably bring this in for landing, but generated options. So notice now that, and I didn't actually, that's the other thing I could do. I could just choose to, let's do this. Let's import the Ansible automation one. Notice that gives me the import to pull that in. So I don't necessarily have to do that from here, but I can if I want to. So I just removed Ansible automation. This has now been updated. Let's just save to be sure that that's not in there. We don't need it. Now, the other thing that I want to do is this generate options for environment. What if I want to override this? So I have this base function, this base method here. So if I wanted to override this, I might take this a little bit different, a different route. Let's do import as generated option. So I have to approach this a little bit differently because what's going to happen if I try to do that from, you know what? Let's do this. That's not that big of a deal. Okay. We're going to we're going to import generated options for environment as env option. So I'm just going to rename this when we import it. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to reference this specific shared module and not overwrite it when I go through and do the generated options for environment here. This will make sense here in just a second. Field equals none. And then just star quargs is really all we need here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, because if you think about this, this isn't going to be a testing generated options. This is probably going to be deploy AWS resource or EC2 instance or S3 bucket, whatever that ends up being for your environment. What I can do now, though, is I can do env_options. Because I have that plugin passed in, I can pass in the field because I'm getting the field. Now, resource RT_type is what we called it. I can either do it positional. I'm going to do positional. And then I'm also going to pass the quarks back in one by one. But resource RT type here, I'm going to do Amazon Web Services. So I want to filter the available environments to only be AWS related environments. So let's do that. So now what I've done, again, importing this as something that's slightly different because I don't want to, when I declare this function here, I don't want to override the import that we did up top. So I'm going to import it as something different. I'm going to reference it here. So I'm able to be a little more flexible with this. I don't have the actual source code in all of my blueprints, but I've made this shared module a little more flexible, a little more modular in nature, and I can drive it by simply calling that function and passing it in. Let's see if this works now. Sounds great in theory. Shared modules test. There we go. So notice all we're seeing now are AWS-oriented environments. If I switch over to my admins, I shouldn't see anything because they don't have any AWS environments available to them. So the other thing that I'm probably going to want to do here real quick is if there's no environments, I want to let's see, we're going to have to change this. If not envs, I don't want to return none, but I do want to return. I do want to say envs equals, and I'm going to make it a list. Then I'm going to give the first one to be a tuple. The first half of this is an empty string, meaning that this will not allow me to submit this because it's an empty string on a mandatory field. And it's going to tell them no environments available. And I'm also going to return envs here so that we either get the string of IDs or we get the no environments available selection. So let's save this now. Now I have my generated options. Let's go ahead and refresh. This should be pretty dynamic. Let's start with admins. It should tell me no environments available. Can't select anything, can't submit. So we're blocked from submitting because of that. Now, if I go over to my IT group, I see my AWS options. So just making that environment selection a little bit more intelligent in the way that we're doing that. And I could create 3 or 4 or 2,000 other blueprints that are all reusing the same generated options module. It's modular in function. We can take and plug and play into different environments, different scenarios, different circumstances. So these shared modules are really, really powerful. This concludes another video in the How Do I Do Something in CloudBolt video series. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Some of these can get to be a little bit lengthy. If you have any questions at all regarding anything that we've covered today, or really just anything about CloudBolt in general, please reach out to your account team. We're happy to cover any questions you may have. And we're always looking for additional ideas to cover as part of this series. So please reach out to your account team. Let us know how we can help you. And happy automating with CloudBolt.